In this video, I'll discuss how to write a rhetorical analysis, which is the first essay you are going to be writing for my class. So, a simple definition, we already know that rhetoric is how someone can use words to influence an audience. A rhetorical analysis is an essay that breaks down how well or poorly that person has used rhetorical devices to achieve their goal. In our class, we'll be doing a rhetorical analysis over a speech, but you can also conduct analysis over visual arguments such as cartoons, advertisements, oral speeches, and so on. Before I get into how to do a rhetorical analysis, I want to emphasize what it's not. It's not a summary of the content, so it's not just a review of whatever the author has written. It's also not an argument about what the author has written. However you feel about the content, their claim, what have you, you're not putting that within the paper. You are really sticking to how well it's written. And it's not a research paper. You are provided with a speech that you will analyze, and you don't have to do anything beyond just looking at the content of that paper. Okay, so what is a rhetorical analysis? When you are writing one of these, you are not concerned about the content like I just said. You are focusing on the rhetoric. So instead of answering the what, as in what is this paper about, you are answering how. How well does the writer use rhetorical devices to make their argument or persuade the reader? Or if they do use any logical fallacies, how are they using those to push their agenda or argument? So you're analyzing both sides, how well they're using rhetorical devices, and if they're not using those well, if there are any logical fallacies, you're also analyzing how that is working for the writer's purpose. So when you're evaluating a piece of rhetoric, or even if you're just evaluating something as a source for a paper or for your own personal education, you want to think about some of these questions. First of all, why is the author even talking about this topic? What is their intention? What is their credibility or their ethos? You want to think about their argument, again, not whether or not you agree with it, but how persuasive they are about it. Their tone, how are they talking about it? Are they being straightforward? Are they being condescending with their words? So you want to ask all these questions and then think about how the effect it has on you and how it would affect a broader audience. And this is how you begin doing any kind of analysis. You have to ask these questions and then kind of put it together as you go. So now everything that we've learned up to this point starts falling into place and making sense. We're putting everything together. So we are evaluating how well the author is using our rhetorical appeals, ethos, logos, and pathos. So with ethos, first thing, as always, who is the author? What do we know about him? What is their authority to talk on this topic? But also how well do they convey that authority through their words? So we know the author from, if it says by so-and-so, hopefully it's somebody that we've heard of before. If not, we may have to do a little bit of digging to find out who they are. But we also want to see how well that authority is coming through their words. That is also part of ethos. Next, we go to logos. And as always, this is really the most straightforward part of any kind of rhetorical piece of work. This is where you're looking for concrete data, facts, examples, how the words back up what the author is saying in a logical way. Is the argument laid out in a way that's easy to understand, or is it kind of all over the place where it jumps from point to point? Even if someone has sound logic, if they're not putting it forth, or I should say sound data, and they're not putting it forth in a logical manner, that can affect their logos. And finally, do they acknowledge and explain that they understand the opposing side of their argument? If they are making an argument or if they're trying to persuade people to do something, this is always crucial for any kind of credible rhetoric or persuasion, that the author acknowledges the other side of the argument and shows that they are also knowledgeable about that side of the argument. And finally, we have pathos, and this is where you're trying to see how well the author is connecting to the audience on an emotional level. And if you remember from pathos, there's a lot of different ways that they can convey pathos: figurative language, humor, hyperbole, which is exaggeration for effect. Is their tone inviting or condescending? Do they use logical fallacies to try and divert the audience or manipulate them in some way? So this is something, again, you want to pay attention to, and sometimes it can be a little bit difficult when especially if it's a very emotional topic to begin with, as you will see from what you'll be reading this week. So it kind of has pathos built in. So how does the author of the speech that you'll be reading, how do they handle that pathos? Is it over the top, or is it appropriate for the topic? So once you have identified ethos, logos, and pathos, and have a good grasp on how well the author has or hasn't convinced their audience, you start putting it together. And you do need clear organization for this. This is not just a bullet point of all the different rhetorical devices. So you're going to need an introduction and a thesis. And again, you're not making a claim about the topic, you're making a claim about how well the author did on his topic or in arguing their claim. So you want to think about, in this thesis, what point do you want to make about their rhetorical choices? Did they do a good job or a bad job? That's part of your thesis. Did their rhetorical strategies make the argument stronger or weaker, or were there missteps along the way, such as logical fallacies and so on? So even though this is not a research essay, an argument essay, you're still going to have that same organization with a clear thesis that you're going to follow throughout the rest of the essay from your introduction. So in this case, the structure can be pretty straightforward. Each paragraph can focus on one of those rhetorical appeals. So you can have one that focuses on the author's ethos. The next paragraph could go to logos, pathos, and then move on to any kind of problematic um, fallacies or language choice and so on. You want to make sure you stay on topic with the analysis. Don't veer off into any kind of argument, again, about the topic itself. You want to make sure that you are staying as neutral as possible and just explaining how well the author did in their writing. So one of the biggest struggles I see when students are doing this assignment is they don't give very strong examples of the rhetorical appeals. So you don't want to speak just in general terms, such as if you're focusing on ethos, you should have specific passages that you can quote to support how well or not the author has used it. So it's not enough to say when author X talks about this particular thing, that's a good example of ethos. You want to quote or give specific word choices that the author is using, as specific as you can be. Now, again, this is not a summary. You don't want to put too much in there, but with each point you make, you want to have um, a strong example that will help show that you are actually understanding what ethos, logos, and pathos are, and that you can recognize them within a piece of writing. So this week, like I said, you will be reading an assigned speech. This will be from Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, and it is his address to the U.S. Congress. So you will read this speech, and then you'll have a form online that you will use to begin identifying all these rhetorical elements. And then next week, we'll start putting all of those together and we'll look at some specific examples of written rhetorical analysis essays. So for now, you want to go to Blackboard, look at that essay and start filling out the form on all the rhetorical devices. And that is what all you have to do for this week.